Hi everyone, welcome to Shell Essentials. My name is Carrie and I'm going to help you figure out how to find the perfect pants for your purple pincher. Today we're going to chat about popular shells for purple pinchers, which shells you should avoid, and why hermit crabs modify their shells. We're also going to touch on how to measure shells, how to prep shells for your tank, and where to put shells in your tank. I'll also share what it looks like when a hermit crab changes shells, what you should do if your crab won't change shells, and what you should do if you have shell-based aggression in your tank. Last, I'll cover what you should do if your crab is naked, where to find or buy shells, and what you should do with your old shells. Let's start with some general shell info. How many shells should I have in my tank per hermit crab? 3 to 5 shells per crab is recommended. This guideline can vary from group to group, but 3 to 5 shells is a great place to start. You can always add more if you have more space or if you just feel like it. Why are shells so important for hermit crabs? Shells are important for hermit crabs because they protect the crab's soft abdomen from predators and injuries. Shells also store water that crabs use to keep hydrated, and they also use that water to moisten the sand when digging their tunnels. Where do hermit crab shells come from? Snails. The shells that we use for our crabs come from different types of snails. What shells should I buy for my hermit crabs? This is a pretty common question in the crab community. So I'm going to go over a few of the best, in my opinion, the shells that always seem to get taken in my tanks. First up, we have tapestry turbo shells. These shells have a round opening. They're perfect for medium to large sized crabs. The size does max out at about a 1.1 inch opening. You can occasionally find them a little bigger. These are the shells that my crabs never want to leave. Next, we have the jade turbo shell. This shell also has a round opening. It's perfect for large and jumbo crabs, and the size is most commonly about an inch all the way up to 2+ inches. These are the shells that the jumbo crabs in my tank typically use all the time. Next up is the pica or magpie shells. These shells have a round opening and they're perfect for small to medium crabs. The sizes typically range from 0.75 to 1.25. These shells do sometimes run small, so your crab may need a slightly bigger size in this shell depending on how the seller sizes them. Next up, we have the Mexican turbo shell. This shell also has a round opening. They're perfect for small to medium crabs with an under 1 inch shell opening. The great thing about this shell is it's extremely lightweight, so it's a good pick. Moving on to the silvermouth green turbo. These shells have a round opening. They're perfect for small to medium crabs with an under 1-inch shell opening. These are often used by my smaller crabs, and they tend to kind of pick this one over most other shells in this range. Next up, we have the apple murex shell. This shell has an oval opening, so it's a little bit different than the ones we've seen before. This shell is perfect for small to medium crabs. It's found with a 1/2 inch to a 1.1 inch shell opening, and it's the most popular type of murex shell. This is the only murex shell that I've ever had crabs in my tanks personally use. While most of the shells that we looked at before had an O-shaped or even an oval-shaped opening, very occasionally purple pinchers will use D-shaped shells. D-shaped shells are more commonly used by exotic breeds of hermit crabs, like Ecuadorians, but occasionally a purple pincher will fall in love with one of these types of shells. Are carved shells safe for hermit crabs? Yes, carved shells are an awesome choice for hermit crabs. I've found that if I give my crab a natural shell and a carved shell, they are more commonly going to pick the carved version. I think they're probably a little more lightweight, but still have the fit that they want. Here are some pictures of hermit crabs sporting their fancy pants. Carved shells can come in lots of variations. Stripes, ribs, they can have dolphins, turtles, or even palm trees. What kind of shells should you avoid buying for your hermit crabs? You should avoid shells that are painted, shells that are made of glass, shells that are varnished, shells that have added elements like rhinestones, and gold-mouthed turbo shells tend to not be a very popular pick either. Hermit crabs modify their shells, so you don't want anything that could be toxic or dangerous. Hermit crabs modify their shells to give them a better fit. These shells are some shells that came out of my tank or came from rescues that have all been modified in some way. All of these shells are still perfectly safe to use. They just look a little more comfy. Here are some pictures of crabs and their modified shells. The great thing about shell modification is not only do the shells fit the crabs better, but they also get an added benefit of extra calcium and even a little bit of protein because snail shells are mostly made of calcium carbonate. Now let's talk about how to measure shells. To get an accurate measurement of your crab shells, you'll want to measure from one side of the opening of the shell to the other side. See the pictures included. You want to measure only the usable space, and this can be done with either a caliper or a ruler. If you aren't confident about using a caliper or a ruler to measure your crabs, you can use alternate methods like this shell sizing guide from Hermit Harbor or these shell ring sizers from a Little Crabby Co-op. These both make the process a little easier. The shell ring sizers are an awesome choice if you have to measure a shell that is occupied by a crab. When offering new shells, how much of a size increase is recommended? When you purchase new shells for your crabs, you'll want to offer shells of around the same size and also approximately 1/8 of an inch larger. The bigger the crab, the less of an increase that you'll need in that shell size. Here's an example of a shell size range for a small crab. If the crab's current size is 3/4 of an inch or 0.75, and you want to increase that by around 1/8 of an inch, I would offer 1 to 2 shells in a 0.75, 2 to 3 shells in a 0.8 to a 0.85, and 1 shell in a 0.9. How to prep new shells that you've purchased for your hermit crabs. The first thing that you'll want to do is boil the shells for 10 to 15 minutes in dechlorinated water. Then you'll let the shells cool and lay them out to dry with the shell openings facing down to let the water drain out. If you want, you can dip the shells in dechlorinated salt water before adding into your tank or before you lay them out to dry. Here's a helpful tip. You'll always want to inspect shells before adding them to your tank. You want to check the underside of the shells for holes. These shells won't hold water, so they aren't a suitable choice for Hermes. If there are small holes along the top of the shell, these shells are likely still good because they'll still hold that shell water that crabs need. Now that you've purchased your shells and you've cleaned your shells, where should you put shells in your tank? Shells can be placed directly on your substrate. They can be put in one pile, they can be spread out throughout the tank, or they can be placed in shell shops. What is a shell shop? A shell shop is simply a container to put your hermit crab shells in. These can be elaborate and beautiful, or they can simply just be a bowl. Shell shops are an excellent way to keep shells from getting dirty or from being buried in the sand. How to clean dirty shells. If the shells in your tank are covered in sand or have been used as a potty by your hermit crabs, you can always rinse those shells in dechlorinated salt water. If possible, you want to avoid boiling shells after they've been in your tank because crabs can hide deep down in the shells. So unless you're absolutely positive they're unoccupied, you'll just want to rinse. What does it look like when a hermit crab changes shells? In the next slide, you'll see a video sent in by Joy Barnes of her crab changing into a brand new shell. Okay, so you've purchased the shells, you've cleaned the shells, you've put the shells into your tank, and your crab won't change shells. What do you do? The first thing that you can do is change out your shells and add in some new shells. Or you can move the old shells around the crab habitat. Sometimes crabs will find old shells interesting again if you just shuffle them around. You can also dip the shells in primed salt water. Sometimes just a quick dip to rinse them can also entice those picky crabbies. If those methods don't work, then unfortunately, you just have to be patient. Your crab just might not be ready to leave his or her old pants. Some crabs are pretty reluctant to change shells, and the bigger the crab gets, the more likely it is to kind of hang on to what it has. Why is it important to keep the correct type and number of shells in your tank? Keeping shells of the correct types and the appropriate sizes really helps prevent shell aggression among hermit crabs. What is shell aggression or shell jacking? So shelljacking occurs when one hermit crab wants the shell another hermit crab is wearing. Often, the aggressive crab will grab the shell that they want and they'll rock that hermit crab back and forth until they successfully steal the shell. This often results in one crab being left naked, which is a crab emergency. What should I do if my crab is naked? You'll want to follow these steps to encourage the crab to reshell. You'll want to find shells of the appropriate size, rinse those shells in dechlorinated salt water, place the shells in a small cup or container, and add a very small amount of dechlorinated water to the bottom of the cup. You'll want to gently pick up your crab and place them in a cup, with extra care not to damage the soft abdomen. A spoon or a spatula can be carefully used. Then you'll want to place the cup in your crab habitat or in a warm, humid place and cover. Check on the crab periodically to see if they've reshelled. If they haven't, you may have to repeat these steps or offer different shells. Where can I buy shells for my hermit crabs? My go-to is Hermit Harbor. Hermit Harbor is an excellent place to buy shells. The shells are specifically for hermit crabs, so they're measured the right way. The owner Evie is super helpful when you need help finding the right shells or if you need help figuring out what size shell your crab needs. You can also try to find shells in places like Etsy, Amazon, or even eBay sellers. You'll want to make sure that those listings are for hermit crabs, or you may want to reach out to the store owners to see how they size their shells so that you're not buying shells that aren't sized for hermit crabs or that just won't work for you. You can also find shells sometimes in pet stores, in secondhand or thrift shops. You can find them in groups on Facebook or shell stores if you live near the coast. You can even find crab shells on Temu occasionally. These are less reliable sources. They may be a little more difficult to size, but you can sometimes find great and cheap options. What should I do with old shells or shells that no longer fit my crabs? You can resell your old shells or give them to other hermit crab owners. This keeps shells in the community and helps prevent more wild shells from being harvested or taken from hermit crabs who need them in their natural habitat. You can donate your old shells. Many organizations will take used shells and redistribute them to wild hermit crabs. Crustacean plantation is an awesome option in the United States. This is a particularly good option if you have shells that aren't popular among your hermit crabs. The wild crabs are much, much less picky than the crabs in our tanks. If you happen to live in an area where there are wild hermit crabs, you can bring those shells back to the wild hermits. I recommend cleaning those shells to make sure that no bacteria or anything from your tank is going with those shells. And then you can just take them directly back to their natural habitat. Thank you all for watching. I hope that this helps you pick the perfect pants for your purple pinchers. I'd like to thank everybody who contributed, especially the Crab Street Journal, Stacy Griffith, everyone who sent in pictures. I'd also like to thank Hermit Harbor, A Little Crabby Co-op, and Crustacean Plantation. See, do you recommend putting shell traps in tanks or leaving them in the sand? Personally, I use shell shops. For that exact reason. Mine also bury so many shells. And then I don't want to dig them up because I don't want to mess with any molt tunnels or anything like that. So I do tend to keep mine in shell shops in my tanks. One I have like it's just a shower caddy that's just filled with them. And in the other tank, it's a shelving unit, and one whole bottom of that shelf is for shells. Hi, V. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing great. I wish I could be there in person with everybody, but things just did not work out this year, and that is okay. So hopefully next time I'll be there. I brought some shells to show. I thought it would be interesting to show the size that my smallest crab is currently in and the size that my largest crab is currently in because they are very, very different. So my littlest is in about a 1.12. So it would be this guy right here. I don't have any super, super tiny guys anymore. But the biggest shell is almost a 1.7, which is this guy right here. So this is the comparison between my biggest and my smallest right now. It's pretty crazy. So this would be my little Frodo, and this is Balrog. So there's a bit of a difference in these guys. I love this shell. I think it is so pretty. I can't wait to put this one in the tank. I just got this, and I've never had this design before. I've had like the ribs, but never one that looks exactly like that. So I'm hoping that someone will take this. Let's see. Oh yeah, V, definitely. I think at this point now, 8 of our 10 crabs are named after Lord of the Rings characters. So we definitely have a theme going for sure. Let's see. How did I get into making crab foods and selling it online? So I started in 2021. So it's been almost 4 years now. 4 years now. I was in the community, got kind of obsessed, like, most of us do. And I was buying a lot of ingredients. I wanted to try all the different foraging things and I wanted, all these different things. And it wasn't quite as popular. There weren't as many Etsy shops. I was shopping from Just Two Old Crabs, of course, for food. Um, but it was just like that. I want to do this myself. I'm cooking at home. I have all these scraps. How do I dehydrate? Kind of learning all of it on my own. And then it was like, I have way too much stuff. What do I do with all this stuff? It's just going to go to waste. I'm buying these big bulk bags of foraging, flower petals and things, from tea companies, and I'm never going to get through it all. So I kind of started just on Facebook, like, selling things here or there to people like, hey, I made this foraging mix. I made this food mix. I have all these little ingredients. And then just decided I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder and I quit working in person because it was just too hard. It was like going through, all the crazy doctor's appointments and it was just unreliable. So at that point, I was like, I need a hobby. I need something I can focus on because I'm used to working in management 50 hours a week. And now I'm sitting at home. I'm bored. So you know what? Let me just start an Etsy shop. Let me try this and see what happens. It'll be a little hobby. It'll just be a fun thing. I don't know if anybody's going to buy anything. And then here we are 4 years later. And it's my full-time job. So it worked out really well and I'm super happy and I get to do something that I love and be part of a community that I love. So everything happens for a reason, I guess. It is super interesting how things turn out. Happy to be here, always. So I brought also, just in case anybody wanted to see, a caliper. This is what I use now because I am terrible at getting the accurate measurement with a ruler. So it's a caliper, and I thought I'd show a little bit on the big shell since it's a little bit easier to see where you would want to measure. So you would want to avoid the rim. I think that's a pretty common problem, is that someone will measure from the outside to the outside, but that's going to give you a little bit too much. So you'll want to line your caliper up with the inside edges of the shells in order to get an accurate part of what you want there. So this one would be a 1.77. I think the shells are the thing that took me the longest, I think, to figure out, which is why I was kind of like, yeah, you know what, I'll make this presentation, because I'm not honestly the most confident about it. I wasn't for a very long time. It was like the daunting task, like the food stuff. I'm like, I will study it all online. I'll read all the books. I'll do all the stuff. I'll find all the, things, all of the awesome, things that you can find on the Crab Street Journal. But for shells, I always felt like, am I crazy? Am I doing this wrong? Am I measuring it right? So it took me a while to kind of get used to it and feel confident, and a lot of shells that were unnecessary purchases. I spent way too much money buying the wrong types of shells. I mean, I donated a huge amount to Crustacean Plantation last year, and I still have all of these that I need to really purge again. And this is not even like the hundreds of shells at this point that are either in my tank or prepped to go in the tanks. So I was like, I need to do this. I bought like literally 50 D-shaped shells, and I don't have a single crab that's not a purple pincher, and I've never had a crab wear one. So a lot of those went to Crustacean Plantation last year. Um, let's see, Amy. My shirt, why be selling them? I have never really thought about it. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know if anybody would want to buy a Crab Cuisine Go shirt. I made this on a whim, just like, got an email like shirts are on sale for $10. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead. Let me make a shirt, and I'll have it to wear to CrabCon, or I'll, wear it in these little lives. And yeah, so I don't know. I've never really thought about it. Maybe I should. Maybe I'll just put up a couple and see if somebody wants one. Let's see, Christina. Amy, you're so sweet. I have a purple pincher that loves Murex shells. I'm having a hard time finding them online where they actually measure the opening. Yeah, that's definitely hard. We had one, Sir Reginald Fitzgerald. He's a real pain. Honestly, that's why he got his name. He's very bossy, and he was a pain from the beginning. Like, he came in an apple Murex shell, and that was the only shell that boy wanted to change into. He would try to shell jack everyone in the tank in the beginning that had one of those shells. I bought so many of them, and then they max out, and it's like, what do I do? You have to change, my guy. They don't come any bigger. I'm sorry. It took a really, really long time to find one. And he didn't change into any of the other Murex shells that were bigger. Like, it was crazy trying to find them. I'm just ordering them blind. Like, please, like, please give me a bigger one. I need one. But up now he's finally in a regular turbo, and I guess he's happy. I'm not really sure because he doesn't ever really seem happy. He's super grumpy. He's like the one I'm scared of. Like, I would rather pick up the huge jumbo than this guy, because he is like, you put your hand down in the tank and he will like come at you. He's like, don't get in my business. So he's one of the ones that I have to measure with, like, I have like tongs to get him out of the tank, and then I put him on like a little like oven mitt, because I'm terrified that he's gonna pinch me, because he's really not cool. Really not cool. Okay, let's see. Charlotte, jades must be heavy because none of my big guys wear them. Yeah, jades, especially the bigger ones, definitely can get heavy. That's why I like the ones that are carved like this. I don't have a lot of crabs that wear the solid. especially with a lot of the carved options in the tank. I do have a few that will wear these. In my bigger guys, I don't find my little guys like the fully polished ones as much, but they my bigger guys will occasionally wear these. They're like super like the difference in weight between this one and this one is crazy significant. Let's see. How do you ensure the shell is clean? What do you use to clean shells? Chemicals or natural products? So for cleaning, you'll just want to boil. Um, that's the only thing that you can really do is just boil a shell. You don't want to put anything on them because their little soft abdomens are going to be up against that. And so if you use any kind of cleaner, it would, it could soak in there and you don't want that. So you really just boil them. That's all you have to do. Peel off the sticker when you get one that's new. Boil it for 15 minutes, and then it should be okay. If it's in the tank, you don't really have to clean them. I don't mess with the ones that look fine. I just frequently have to clean out the poo. Or if they bury them, then you'll want to rinse. But you don't really need to use anything to ensure that they're like perfectly clean. V's got a mean crab too. Absolutely. Some of them, I swear. It's like I have Gimli, who I'm absolutely in love with. That crab is like, he has no fear. He just wants to like watch everyone and be on the wheel. And he's so chill. Like he tries to climb on me when I'm getting in the tank and cleaning. I can hand feed him. And then I've got Reginald, and we are not friends like at all. He's the one who's tearing the decor off the walls and like he's the first one that when we introduce a new crab into that tank, he's like the first one that's like squaring up and making sure that, you know, he's the boss and you don't mess with him. It's really funny. I love watching those interactions between them. It's super interesting to see their different personalities. And I've got my little baby Frodo that's just so shy and he just doesn't get into anything. And then other ones are wild. They're just wild. Let's see. Oh my gosh, Fee. You gotta rescue the crab because it's mean. That's honestly. Reginald was one of our pet store crabs, so I imagine that he's just been through it and he's just like, I don't care anymore. Listen, none of this is happening to me again. I'm just gonna square up and that's gonna be it. Um, he's definitely um, a little crazy. So we've had him about 4 years and I don't think he's changed a single bit, not even a single bit. um, the bigger guys, we have one now. Balrog is going on her 10th year in captivity, and she's just like a gentle giant. She's the one that always gets eggs every single year. She's just super, chill, and she was with her other owner for 6 years before we got her. So um, it's really interesting how much they change and how comfortable they get. It's like I have one tank that is all the jumbos and they are out and about all day long. Day walkers, they don't care. They don't get bothered by anything. And then I've got my other tank of the littler guys or the newer rescues kind of go in there, and it's interesting seeing how the dynamic is so different in two different tanks because they're definitely more shy and they don't like, you got to be careful about your shadows and things like that. So funny. I'm so glad I wore my leather gloves when I picked up my crab to measure a shell. She was so angry and those pinchers were grabbing me left and right. Yeah, she would not recede into her shell. That is an issue that I have with some of mine too, especially the big ones. They don't want to go in the shell to be measured. So that's when I use those shell ring sizers that were in the presentation because it's so much easier to like, kind of get a moment where they'll give you a second to like hold it up. But if I tried to use a caliper or something, I feel like they just take it. The big ones would just snatch it. That would be the end of it. If adopting a painted crab, do you ever remove paint from a shell or just throw it out? So I don't know of any methods that will remove paint from a shell, that's not gonna leave any kind of, like, residue. I think someone is testing. I think I've seen it in a couple of groups, that someone is testing how to remove them and see if they can kind of get them back to where they need to go. Typically, I have never had a painted shell, which is wild. I don't know how, but, our original pet store crabs didn't have any, and then, none of our rescues have come in them. So, I don't personally have any, but I know that you can also donate them to some places, and they'll use them, like, as a "don't use this" type of thing. But otherwise, I think that they're just kind of done for. If that's if anybody has any better information than that, definitely let me know because that's, um I wish they could be reused again and, you could ensure that you're getting that off or even the varnish for the ones that you can find sometimes. It would be great if those could be removed, but I'm just not sure how. Adopt or save crabs from the public, Facebook Marketplace, or Craigslist. That that's awesome. That's awesome, Lisa. That's where most of mine came from too. I applied to be an Elkos adopter, and then it was just there were too many in my area all the time. Like I was getting, tagged in things, and that's still happening. It was like 3 months ago we had our last rescue, and it was just someone, a friend of a friend, that was like, "Hey, please take this crab. I'll drop it off to you tomorrow." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll make room. We'll get it. We'll do it." Christina, I keep their painted shells as a guide as to how much they've grown, like a baby book. That's super cute. It's super cute. I wish I had the original shells. I never thought to do that with ours. It would be amazing to see how small those little guys were. I know I have Sir Reginald's last apple murex. This is the biggest one I ever found. I kept that one because he was such a pain. He was in the shell for so long. So this is a memory of our plight with Reginald and his pickiness. I do know that the little rescue from last year came in this one, this little guy. I love this one. Christina, if you want this shell, you can have it. I will send it to you with your order because I have no use for it. Nobody else wants them. They don't care about them. So I will send this to you. I want it to be used for somebody. And I have enough shells hanging about. This is another one too that is super used. This was one of our rescues, and he had been in it for, I think she said like 2.5 years and had never been offered any other shells. So it's so like worn down and just like you can barely even see the little spiral on it anymore because he wore it for so long. Absolutely, Christina. I will totally send that to you. I'm going to leave it out of my box so that I do not forget. I would rather someone use it than it just sit in a box collecting dust forever. So that would be good. Let's see if I have any other interesting shells. I did find after I did my presentation an example of a shell that wouldn't be usable, where you can see there's a little hole there at the bottom. That is what you want to avoid if you're buying shells because it's not going to hold water. So it actually has a hole up here at the top too. So up here at the top, this would be perfectly fine. It's no big deal. Like they can still hold water. They don't have to worry too much about that, but that one on the bottom would would make it unusable. I think I have some oddball shells here too. Here's one of the many D-shaped shells that I bought that I just didn't care for it. None of mine do. So I hope eventually we'll get an exotic, but it's just kind of, if it happens, it happens. I'm not really actively seeking them out, I guess. Um, I'm just trying to leave space open for anybody that comes about. So um, kind of see what happens there. See if I have any other interesting shells in this bin. Just lots and lots of the same ones because my guys can fit. Look at this little tiny guy. I have so many little tiny ones in case we ever get babies, and Love it. I should have brought all my little teeny tiny ones. Also, look at this little guy. Look at this little turbo. I love it. I just want a tiny, tiny little one so bad. It would be so cute. I think I probably have the most amount of Mexican turbos in the little sizes. My crabs love these. They're just so light and they're so cheap. These are what I usually recommend to people if they ask me and they have small crabs because you can buy so many of these for just nothing. And my crabs tend to like them a lot. So Ecuadorians are so funny and playful. They are. They're so funny. I love watching people's videos of them. They're so gorgeous too. They're so cute. I would love to have one, but I just don't want to actively seek anybody out. I'm just looking for, adoptions. Maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe I'll get lucky and have one eventually. Maybe when I get more tanks. Just don't tell my husband that. Don't tell him. I've already plotted. My daughter goes away to college next year, and I'm like, well, that's some extra space. I wonder where I can put another tank. That would be great. I feel like most people can probably relate with that. What kind of shells would you recommend for larger Ecuadorians? Mine is in a 1.25D shape that is way too small. I need to size up, but struggling to find bigger D-shaped options. So I wish I could help with that, but I am super duper not versed at all with D-shaped shells. I actually wanted to do my presentation on all shells for hermit crabs for not just purple pinchers, and then I was like, I honestly have no idea what I'm doing here. Since I have never had one or had any that take D-shaped shells, I'm not the most confident about that. But you could reach out. I bet Evie from Hermit Harbor would be willing to help, or any of the other owners of shops. They definitely would be able to give you more correct information than I can, for sure. I definitely I don't even honestly I'm as I was putting together my presentation, I was like, I think I'm gonna have to cut this down to only purple pinchers because I'm not even 100% confident about my measuring skills with the D shape just because I don't do it. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to them. That's the best thing to do if you're not confident, because then you're not going to wind up wasting all your money or just guessing and hoping. They should be able to kind of give you the best guidance. You have Ecuadorians that like both shells. That's interesting. Uh, that's super interesting. I think I only have a couple of D-shaped shells left, and I think all of them are this shell. This is pretty much all I have. I think my mom bought like 50 of these at a garage sale one time, just in a giant bag. And I was like, hey, you know what? Somebody will use them, or they'll go to crustacean plantation and maybe the wild crabs will use them. So that was a good find. It was like $3. But I kept a couple of these just in case when I got rid of most of mine. But for the most part, none of my little guys use it. This one has the tiniest little modification on it, and it's so cute. I love when they modify their shells. It's the most adorable thing. Super duper cute. Large D-shaped shells are hard to find. Aussies love them, and I'm looking for apple snail shells that are about 5 to 5.5 centimeters, and they're impossible. I think that's like, even when I was researching, I was like, I can't even find as much information about D-shaped shells. Like, I kind of knew what I knew about the O-shaped and the oval-shaped, and then I'm trying to look up D-shaped, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just not. There's not as many resources. It feels like, to find them, or to understand them. That's my new goal. I'm going to understand them. I'm going to do it. Maybe I'll do a follow-up talk next year if they'll have me, and I'll do the perfect pants for your, Ecuadorian or something. We'll make it a series, and we'll just go through. I'll learn. I would definitely like to know. just in case, because what's gonna happen when I get one? I'm gonna be panicked. Like, I need to know how to do this. So we're always still learning. I'm 5 years in now to my crab journey, and I still don't know everything, and I don't think I ever will. I don't think I ever will. Black Nerite and moon shells currently. I have seen moon shells. I did see some crabs and moon shells when people were submitting pictures for the talk. I don't think I even own a moon shell since none of my little guys are in any of those. I really need to get some tiny rescues so I can use up some of these little teenies that we have. Oh, I just need to donate them. This is another shell too that my crabs don't tend to like a lot. So I'd probably butcher the name. Turbo Sarmaticus? I'm not sure. But I've never had any luck with these. I love them so much. I think they're so beautiful. I have them in a couple of sizes and a couple in the tanks, but I haven't had anybody take these, so I didn't add them in the presentation since none of my little guys have gone for them. Kara, that's good timing. I think it was planned. We had like a psychic connection. It's like, I'm gonna pull out this shell and she's gonna ask about it right now. So I really want somebody to take it. They feel so lightweight and so nice, and I've put bigger than what they usually wear in there to see if maybe it's just smaller and they take a bigger one, but never. I've never seen them try it on, or they just flick them out of the way, and that's the end of it. Ease like these, Chastity. I'll have to keep that in mind if I ever get any. Maybe these will just be there, or they'll be in the next shell purge. We'll see. Try not to hang on to too much. I don't want to be like overconsumption and keep them all the time, but it's really hard to not buy them. And I got so many with a lot of my rescues. So I have a lot of really weird shells in here that came with some of them. The Aussies won't wear them either. I wish they would. They're so cute. I wish we could just talk them into it. And can we just try it out? Maybe if you try it on, you'd like it. I think it's so fun. I do need to buy more jumbo shells. You see, my jumbo bin is a little more pathetic than the other bin because I have 6 jumbos now. So most of those just go straight in the tank, honestly. I have a couple of just ones that from my Temu research. I did that to see what I could find on Temu to see if it was even worth telling people. It's just kind of it's just kind of it's a crapshoot, to be honest. It was like sizing definitely wasn't correct. Some of them were really small. Some of them are really big, which is nice when you're paying $8, but you have to gamble, and that gamble is not very fun. So I just kind of, you could try if you want, but might not be worth it if it's someone who doesn't want the risk or really, really needs the shells. So I did get one really good one that was like over a 2-inch. That was really nice, but I bought 10 and really only one matched the listing description, even though they said for hermit crabs. So that's why I kind of recommend just going to someone who specializes in it. Jumbo shells are hard to find. I only have 4 shells. My jumbo is in a 2-inch opening. They are hard. It's hard to get those really, really big ones, and they're so expensive. They're really expensive. So I feel like I'm so careful when I'm buying them because I don't want to waste, $18 on a shell that is going to wind up being the same size that mine have. My crabs, it's either jumbos right now or mine are in that, range that are really, really difficult to find, that like 1.4, 1.5 range that I'm always looking for, I feel like. Um, and then I have one single little guy. in his little 1.15 shell right now. I don't have any littles anymore. It's wild to see how much they've grown since I first got them. Because thinking of a jumbo crab at that point, when I had my little pet store crabs that were just the tiniest little babies, it's crazy to see how big they are now and how different they look. V, you've had no luck with Temu? Yeah, it's just like, it is what it is. It's cheap. You get what you pay for. So yeah, I wound up giving most of those away to people because they were too small. So I gave them to one of my customers that needed shells. So yeah, well, I think it's almost time for Aura's presentation on foraging, and I am so ready to see that. So does anybody else have any other questions or anything? Thank you, Kara. I was super nervous about it, so I'm glad that you loved it. I've rewatched it like 45 times, like stressing out about, did I miss something? Did I, misspeak? Or, I'm glad to do it. Hopefully, it's some good information for someone, or it helps, especially a new owner that needs a little more guidance about shells. Thank you all for chatting and asking questions and being about. I hope to see everybody around. I'm ready for all the next talks and tomorrow, and learning everything about everything all the time. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, V. Thanks, Rachel, Karina. You guys are all awesome. I'm gonna go ship now. There's a lot of that to do. I have a lot of shipping. I know what I'm doing all day today while I watch these talks. So I'm gonna go get caught up on orders in the shop, and I hope you guys all have a great day watching all of the talks. And if anybody has any more questions or anything, you can feel free to reach out, and I'll answer them the best that I can. But thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you later.